We all have something in common, folks, and that is that we are all renewable consumers of the future, one way or another. And this panel is going to explain what it's about.
All right, are we good? Let's rock and roll. Howdy, y'all. Whoa, there we go, that's live. I'm gonna stand up here and we'll get going. Thanks for coming out. My name is Charlie Himmelai, and I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Solar Power Association. We are the state trade association for solar companies active here in the state of Texas. Oh, there we go, bam, thank you for that. The State Trade Association for solar companies active here in the state of Texas, from manufacturers and solar panel producers all the way down to construction, distribution of materials, and residential and commercial installation, kind of the full supply chain of solar on the wholesale and the retail side. We work with the state government to help make sure that the solar industry is well represented and that we can grow solar here in the state of Texas. So super excited to have the panel with me today to talk about the renewable consumer of the future, which is an interesting concept because we're still trying to make the renewable consumer of today happen, which we are doing very quickly. I thought I'd share just a couple of quick points and then turn it over to my panel to share some of their insights, and we'll have some questions and get a good conversation going and let you all ask some questions that you are interested in. So we are really underway here in Texas with renewable energy. You probably have seen that the wind industry is the largest here. Texas has the largest wind industry in the country. More wind installed in Texas than any other state. We have 17,000 megawatts, which is quite a lot. It's good for about 15% of the Texas electricity use last year, so a very significant contribution. The solar industry has 1,215 megawatts of solar installed, which is less than wind, but for solar it's quite a lot, starting to come up. We doubled our solar in the past year here in Texas, and that's good for 9th among states in the country. So we're starting to come on with solar here in the state of Texas and growing very quickly. Nationally, the solar industry has installed over 1 million solar systems. 1 million. So we are really getting out of the early stages of solar and getting into a mainstream situation where everyone can get it more and more, from utility scale to commercial, all the way down to residential and everything in between. But we have a long way to go, which is kind of where this panel comes into play, looking to the future and how we're going to make it happen more, what it's going to look like, and how that might go. So our grid operator, ERCOT, does expect solar and wind to grow tremendously over the next several years. They are projecting that by 2031, kind of 15 years from now, solar will have 23,000 megawatts, so 23 times what we currently have, and in that year will be good for about 12.5% of the Texas portfolio of electricity. So a pretty significant entry into what we're doing here in Texas, and by that time there'll be many thousands of customers with solar in a lot of different ways. 2031, so about 15 years from now, so pretty significant growth, and our job as industry is to make sure that we can do that and get there successfully. So I've got a couple of great panelists here I want to introduce to tell a little bit about what they're up to and how they're making that happen, and their thoughts on how some of this will go. So we'll have Brad Stutzman from O3 Energy, the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of that company, and Cullen Hay, the General Manager of U.S. Energy at Direct Energy. So a good mix of solar company and electricity company, retail provider, to give two different angles on how the industries are going to reach consumers and what that's going to look like going forward. So we're going to start off with Brad, let him talk for a few minutes, and we'll kick it over to Cullen. So come on up, or as you'd like.
Hi, my name is Brad Stutzman. I'm COO and co-founder of O3 Energy Solutions. We're a renewable energy developer whose focus is in solar and wind energy. Our territory, we pretty much cover the entire Southwest United States, Hawaii, and we've moved into Guam and Mexico. Our focus, what we do is we go in and we develop solar and wind projects. We find the site, we design them, we construct them, and then we own and operate them long term. Before founding O3 Energy Solutions, I held several roles within the renewable energy industry, both in project development and project finance. Over those 8 years within the industry has had many innovations both on the technology side and on the consumers that are using renewable energy. For example, whenever I first started in the industry, the project cost for a solar project was about $6 a watt. This made it very difficult for residential consumers who wanted to put solar on their house to invest in the solar project. Today, the cost has dropped to about half of that, and it's made it more affordable for the average person to invest in a solar project for their small business or for their home. There's a lot of exciting innovations going on in the industry, and I think renewable energy is going to take over as far as the main supplier of energy here going forward within the United States and across the world.
Nice. Cool.
My name is Cullen Hay, and I am the general manager. I run the U.S. energy business for Direct Energy. For those of you who may not know much about Direct Energy, believe it or not, we're the third largest retailer in the state of Texas, and we are the largest retailer in the U.S., but when you combine both commercial, industrial customers, and residential. From my perspective, I'm responsible for 2.1 million electricity and natural gas customers across the U.S., and about 730,000 of those customers are right here in Texas. We are owned by a company from the UK, but we are the UK's North American affiliate. We serve load throughout the US, but also in Canada, and we are in the process of expanding many of our renewable energy products across all of our landscape, but to also include Texas as well. In Texas, our main goal here is to try to give consumers what they want. And what we have found is that consumers are morphing more and more toward wanting something that is more environmentally friendly. That wasn't always the case. 5 years ago, people just wanted a price. And today, I think consumers here have become very connected to the fact that they can get both price and a renewable energy product or renewable energy based products, that they can get all those things. The retail industry here is very grown up. In other parts of the country, many people don't even know they have choice. But in Texas, so many people have been a part of this journey we're on for choice that it's now become the responsibility of people like me at different retailers across the state to try to continue to offer more and more services. So if I likened it to the telecom industry, when telecom first deregulated, all the main business companies, T-Mobile or Sprint or whatever, they put out rates and they offered you minutes. And then they maybe offered you a little better minutes, and they offered you some free roaming, and they kind of kept adding on to the package. And now today you get long-term offers at really attractive rates. If you sign for a certain period of time, they'll throw in your device or your phone. The energy industry here is now just getting to this point where we're realizing that bundled services and giving more for value is what consumers have become most engaged with. And so I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited to be a part of this, and this opportunity for us to start talking more about all the things that are out there available to consumers that consumers just aren't aware of.
Great, cool. Well, building off of what you just said, you kind of touched on this, but looking towards the future, what jumps out at you in terms of are the types of customers that you're engaging with on these issues changing, or are their interests changing, and how do you see that kind of going forward over the next several years?
Well, what's interesting is that the millennials are now starting to enter the space of being purchasers. There was a point about 5 years ago when people were just interested in buying energy, and they weren't really focused on trying to get involved in what that really meant. But today's consumer is a lot more technologically savvy. They're focused more on the environment matters to a younger generation. I'm not saying that it doesn't matter to all generations, but the truth is that people are coming off of college campuses today with more focus on what is environmentally safe matters to them, and that is becoming a large portion of the consuming public. And it's almost every industry is transitioning what their offer set looks like to try to speak to that more engaged customer. And so it's through products, it's through renewable energy credit products where consumers they know that they're making an investment in something that's good. It's buying green energy, actual green megawatts off of a wind farm or biomass or solar. We're seeing this major push throughout the U.S. of utilities and consumers who are now asking for more from our sector than they ever asked in the past.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I can affirm that. I think that's definitely true. Brad, similar question. When you think about renewable energy consumer of the future, what does that mean to you? What jumps out as interesting in the future?
Yeah. So I would agree with my colleague over here. Is absolutely right. Sustainability has become something that's embedded in our culture, and our culture is thinking about that. Whereas before, the main thought was how just energy in general. Yep. People realize there's a difference now between brown power and green power. What we're seeing on our end is we're seeing with costs coming down for renewables, it makes a little bit more sense for individuals to go green versus go with the brown power. The reason being, in the past, people thought of renewable energy as more of a luxury item, paying that extra money to help the environment. Well, now that costs have come down and people can realize, hey, I can help the environment, and you know what? I'm also saving money in doing so. It really makes a lot of sense for people, for their family budgets, to sit down and say, hey, let's take a look at these expense line items and figure out how to cut these and also save the environment. So you see a lot of more people jumping on board, even in states that may be a little bit more conservative and not as willing to just jump on the green bandwagon.
Right.
So
I can totally attest that as well. Just the economics have gotten so attractive. For solar nationally, we can say that the cost of solar has dropped 85% since 2009. Just a tremendous drop, and that opens up so much more market, so many more customers who are able to do it and want to do it, and therefore don't need to do it exclusively for an environmental benefit, but because it also gives them some financial benefits, either direct cost reduction or just ability to kind of have some certainty over time in their costs. So I totally agree. That's likely to happen. Kind of thinking about where we are today and moving into the future, what do you, and I'll give you both a chance at this, what are some of the top challenges in reaching residential, commercial, and potentially utility customers with renewable energy products?
So we focus on on-site generation of solar or wind. The major problems that we've seen, and it may be a little bit different, is there's not a common practice across the U.S. Basically, every state, every county, every city, every utility has different requirements, different laws, different rules, different processes. And for each one of those, each time we start a new project in one of those areas, we have to go out, we have to learn those rules, we have to learn how to do the permitting there, what is required, how do we design it, how do we tweak it. So it's very difficult to replicate it over and over again. And what that does is that adds costs to those projects. And those costs that are absorbed by those projects, those have to be passed on to the end consumer. And in general, if we're using up more time as well, we can't go focus on the next project, can't scale up. So those are really the main problems that we've been seeing. If we could have some sort of standard across the board where every project could be the same, that would really drive costs down even lower and really help the market in general.
Absolutely, and certainly, as the cost of solar modules comes down, that's a big part of the cost reduction. But as it turns out, the hardware is only about half of the total cost of a system. And certainly you have labor, but also what Brad mentioned, kind of the regulatory costs and the process costs and the financing costs. Those things are a pretty big chunk of the cost of delivering solar, and we hope that that too goes down over time and makes solar cheaper. So it's not just a technology improvement situation, it's also a process improvement, regulatory improvement. So definitely making progress on that front as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, from a residential perspective, there's two things I think that are really obstacles, and really the first one is awareness. I think there probably a lot of people in this building are very aware of what's out there and available to them, because they've taken the time to research it and figure it out and get involved in it and learn about it and figure out what the cost benefits are. But across the U.S., I think overarching awareness is lacking. And so it's my responsibility, but it's also the regulatory responsibility. It's the responsibility of the different commissions and public service advocates across the U.S. who should be responsible for helping get the message out. The second thing that really does plague, and it's not a Texas problem, but it is a U.S. problem, is that for you to sell these products and for these products to make sense, you really need to have what's called a smart meter. And it's a meter that gets read every 15 minutes. Because that meter, it allows you to change your behavior and reap the benefits of that behavioral change. And Texas is virtually has an entire smart meter rollout is across the entire state, just about everywhere. That is not the case in the rest of the U.S. Smart meters are very rare outside of this state. There's few pockets in few states. Pennsylvania's got a little bit. Maryland's got a lot. Illinois' got a fair amount. But without that, then it really is you just doing something because it was out of the goodness of your heart and not because you're going to reap some financial benefit from behavioral change. And so that is a limitation for us about selling time of use products and environmentally focused renewable products, because if we can't settle it on the 15-minute interval meter in that, if we can't settle it that way, the consumers just don't get the real benefit for what they're really doing. Their behavior's not paying off.
Right. I think that's a great point. I think the evolution of what the customer does is kind of a system level problem. It's certainly they're going to add some new things onto their home or business, but the system as a grid, as a regulatory environment also has to change with them, because you may need to evolve some of the processes and infrastructure that are in place to be able to accommodate what the customer is doing and wants to do. That makes a lot of sense to me. So you touched on RECs a little bit, and we should probably define what a REC is for the audience in case we haven't done that yet. So I'll give you a chance to do that. But just kind of building on that, RECs being one of the traditional ways that customers have engaged with renewable energy outside of putting solar on their own roof. And it seems like there's a lot more ways that customers are starting to get engaged with renewable energy, and providers such as retail providers are offering new products and services other than just putting solar on your roof. Could you talk a little bit about some of the things that Direct is doing and other things that you've seen?
Sure. So first off, renewable energy credits was kind of the way for the renewable energy to get funding for itself. So renewable energy credits were out there. They were offered to anyone who had a renewable energy source. They were provided a certain number of credits that they were provided them for free. I mean, they had to build their site, but they were given these credits that they could then turn around and go sell in the marketplace. And the money that they got from it would help them reinvest in more activity. So we were selling, a lot of retailers and a lot of commercial industrial businesses were buying renewable energy credits and helping fund the industry. And now the industry is out there. And what at that time it was RECs was really the only way, because there were so few sellers of actual green energy, that RECs was your only real avenue into selling a green product. But because we have so much renewable energy now on the grid, we're setting up programs across the U.S. in which we actually are going out and buying the physical megawatts off of a green source, be it wind or biomass or solar facility or landfill. We can now go. There's enough megawatts out there for us to purchase where we can actually. We're not selling you brown energy and telling you it's green. We're buying green and selling you green. In fact, in early May, Direct Energy will be launching a new market in which we're entering the state of Virginia, and in that market we'll be selling 100% green energy bought off a number of different renewable sources. That's going to happen in Texas. There's enough wind here. It's unit contingent, so it's got a price difference to it, meaning the wind doesn't always blow, we know that, but for the most part, they're sited in areas in which wind is very high. So it's unit contingent, slightly a little bit more expensive, but it's not as expensive. The price difference isn't as great as it once was. Community solar is the thing that we're working on. Green Mountain and others are working on, where companies like Direct Energy, we own a solar company called Direct Energy Solar, and we purchase parcels of land in which we put large installations of solar panels, and then we sell energy off those solar panels to people who live in a general radius of that facility. It's called community solar. Those projects are starting to pop up everywhere. There's a whole bunch of investment and lease agreements and financing that's occurring for a lot of different companies to build these farms. So, I mean, it's kind of community solar in Texas, I think, is the next big thing that you're going to see in your local community.
I think that's super exciting because I know, unfortunately, not every roof can hold solar. We didn't build all of our homes and commercial buildings to really host solar. Hopefully, over time, home builders and neighborhoods will kind of orient appropriately and give you some nice roof plane and a direction to put some solar on it, but a lot of homes weren't built that way. They have a lot of trees, and so the unfortunate reality is not every home really has the technical ability to host solar, even if economically it would have been a good idea. And so looking at some of these other pathways to get you hooked into solar through an off-site kind of community solar program or another retail offering is super exciting, because obviously as consumers and as industry, we want to make sure that 100% of consumers have access to solar and wind and other renewable energy sources, and not just the people that happen to have a house that's oriented the right way, or the people with flat commercial rooftops and that sort of thing. So that's a huge, exciting area of innovation that I hope to see continue. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to jump on that.
Absolutely, and just to expand a little bit on what you were saying about RECs. RECs aren't just an arbitrary sort of a sort of thing that come along from green energy. So the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which each state sets up, requires utilities to purchase a certain amount of green energy or have green assets. Most of the time, they don't necessarily go out and build facilities themselves. They have other people do that, and then they buy those RECs. So other states have passed certain legislature to push up the amount of RECs that are required. So Hawaii, for instance, is requiring that all utilities go renewable 100% by 2050. So if people here in Texas, as voters, go out and push that same sort of thing here in Texas, then we'll push the state to go ahead and start upping that amount in the RPS, and really pushing for renewable energy across the state, and pushing for even more.
Yeah, it's a good point, and you mentioned how every place is different. Renewable portfolio standards are one of those policies that are different everywhere. Texas nominally has one, but the level that we required was passed many years ago because we built so much wind. So we actually are that program is fully subscribed. No new renewable additions are going to be built because of that, and there's kind of no other real state level policy that's driving renewable energy in Texas. There's no mandate, no real statewide incentive for wind or solar, so it's really up to these companies to make it happen and for customers to demand it, which is interesting. It puts Texas a little bit behind some of the other big states that have had that kind of intentional policy, but it also means that we're not beholden to certain programs or certain policies, and we can really go serve customers' needs in whatever way they see fit and whatever offerings the companies have. So there's actually some opportunity there, and in the long term, I'm optimistic that we won't need those kind of policy structures, and we will just serve the market. So it's actually going to be fine. But in the near term, it puts Texas at a slightly harder place than some of the others. So I'll just ask one or two other questions and let the audience kind of jump in here as well. I'm a solar guy, so I look very closely just all solar all the time, but consumers don't always do that. And certainly when you think about renewable energy for consumers, you're looking at all sorts of other technologies that they may be incorporating, energy efficiency and conservation, electric vehicles more and more, possibly energy storage and some other things that customers might do. You mentioned smart meters that empower that. So wanted to get a sense of what other synergistic steps you think might support the development of renewable energy by consumers.
Well, I kind of connect the dots between renewable energy and a customer's ability to consume less. And I think that both of those are achieving a really important goal, which is for us to find some way to not put so much strain and stress on our infrastructure and what it does to our environment. And so those two things are hand in hand. So I think it's obviously there's storage capabilities that have come about in the last 5 years that didn't exist. There's smart technology. Everyone's probably learning more and more about how to make your home more efficient. Smart thermostats, smart plugs, smart lighting, any and all things you can use your smartphone to manage your home in a much more efficient way. You can buy time of use products like, we have a product that's free weekends. Okay, so if you buy a 12-month product from our company, you get free weekends. We don't charge you for any of the megawatt hours that you consume from 6 p.m. on Friday until 11:59 on Sunday. The goal of that product is not to sell some sort of, bait and switch. It's to get people to do things differently, live differently. Find time to do your laundry and your cleaning and things like that are your largest expensive things in your home. Do those things on the weekend. Take advantage of behavioral changes. And smart technology is driving that ability. I mean, just today I was driving up here and it's hot in Houston. That's where I'm headquartered in Houston. It's hot there today. And I got a note from my wife that they were on their way up for a family event this afternoon. And I looked on our smart thermostat and it's at 71 degrees and the house is gonna be only air conditioning pets for the next 24 hours. That's very disturbing. So I got on my phone and I turned it up to 81 and I can do that now, which I couldn't do that before. And I think it's renewable and it's consumption reduction. It's how we begin to reorient our thinking about how to use less. And my company's our slogan is use less of what we sell. We really do mean that. All of our products have some consumption reduction piece in it that we want people to not only get but take advantage of. So from my perspective, I think it's a combination of both where the renewable sector can take us, but also where we as consumers who have control of our own lives can take consumption.
Right. Super exciting. Brad, thoughts?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. It's all about efficiencies. And right now, the way everyone as a generation, as a society, think about everything that you have that's electronic. That years ago we didn't have. Your smartphone, your computer, electric vehicles. We didn't have those years ago, and we're consuming more and more electricity, and we got to figure out how to make it more efficient. And in doing so, I agree with you on the smart meters. That helps with the efficiencies. It doesn't make sense to air condition pets, at least not at 71 degrees. But absolutely, we're seeing more and more implementation of certain things like EV charging stations into our projects. We do a lot of commercial solar canopies for businesses, especially in California and Arizona, and here in Texas, wherever there's a lot of sunshine and people want to keep their cars cool. They have a limited footprint. So it makes sense to dual use the property. And what we're doing is we're going ahead and we're, even though in Texas, EVs are they're not as popular as they are in California, but you're seeing more and more Teslas on the road, you're seeing more and more Volts on the road, it's coming. So we're just going ahead and implementing those, adding those into all of our new builds because we know it's coming and might as well prepare for the future. Yeah. Same thing with the energy storage. I don't feel that energy storage is really at the point where it's really cost effective. The batteries still have some time to go. You know, there's only a few years that those things are good for. And but what we're doing is we're going ahead and designing to implement that stuff in the future. And that's really what it takes, is that forward look as far as the efficiencies and the processes versus just looking at what we have today. And that's one of the challenges within our industry as well.
That makes a lot of sense, and I totally agree. I think the electrification angle is very important long term. You know, getting vehicles electrified opens the ability for them to run on solar and wind, because it's a lot easier to take the emissions out of a car if it's running on electricity than otherwise. So big opportunity to take more advantage of the giant solar and wind resource we have. The state of Texas actually has more solar potential than any other state because we have so much land, so much sun, very intense. So let's use it to power not just the homes and the buildings, but the cars too. There's kind of no reason we can't do that. So I'm excited to see that with the awareness improvements that you mentioned, where people become clear about how their own usage affects the larger system and can take steps to improve that and to do some innovative new things to bring down their impact, to increase their use of renewables, to reduce their usage overall. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I would imagine that, you know, in general, the public does not know that we use only about 1% or so renewable electricity in this country, 1% to 2%. And if they knew that, they would be much more vocal, but much more active in making that number go up. So the more smart meters, the more awareness that you have and a clear signal, I think that's going to empower a lot of change there. So I wanted to give folks a chance to ask some questions. If anyone in the audience had questions of this crew, I believe we're going to say come up to the mic to do that. Please. There.
Okay. I have a sort of a strange question, but it's kind of ignorance. I live in Houston, and I'm in a master plan community in Lake City. Okay? Huge community. And we have these transmission lines that run all across the back of our community. And we knew that when we bought into that community. Someone used the word synergy. Why can't we take those distribution lines and under them put solar collectors and put wind generators and cell towers for communication? That way people understand and get used to it, and we're better using the existing infrastructure. Is that possible, or have I missed the boat somewhere? The other reason why it strikes me is I see these people out there cutting this grass in this transmission line, using lots of energy, wasting money, which my homeowners association, we had to pay for, okay? Whereas we could actually use this area under these transmission lines for another purpose. Or if I'm totally missed the boat.
Sure. Go ahead.
So the one of the main reasons people can't do that is because they're electrical devices, and sometimes you get arcing between the electrical devices. Things of that nature get interference. One of the best ways to dual use transmission lines, you see it in California. If you're in the LA area, the best way to dual use it is they have crops or some sort of nurseries where they have plants underneath it. That's really the best way to dual use the land. But as far as putting solar under there, you can't do that because you're going to get the shading from those electrical lines, and that's just going to throw off the solar. Same thing with if you're putting cell phone towers, you're going to get interference from those. You get all sorts of interference whenever you start combining that stuff together.
Yeah.
I might actually answer a little bit more provocatively. The lines that are in your neighborhood are owned by, for you in Houston, they're owned by CenterPoint. And CenterPoint and Encore and other utilities have not exactly gotten into the game of grasping and appreciating what it means to be a part of this whole ecosystem. So they own those lines and they get paid to own those lines and to continue that line health, but they're not exactly financially incentivized to go off and do things that are unique and interesting like what you just described. And really it's our responsibility, when I say our, I say consumers' responsibility. I'm a consumer too. It's our responsibility to start asking more of our public utilities than we probably have in the past. It's okay for them to come back to the consumer and say, we're going to do these things. We're going to put more renewable energy on the ground. And by the way, we're going to flow through a charge through to the customer in the form of transmission distribution service charges. Let the consumer decide and let the PUC in Texas decide whether those are fair and equitable, but they're not really coming to the table with those new ideas. And I think it's incumbent upon us to ask our utilities to do that.
I think that's a great point. You want to come up to the mic here? Go. I'll just add quickly, I think that's a great point, and you would definitely look for CenterPoint and Encore to really be empowering customer investment and customer decisions around energy, doing things themselves, but also making sure that what they are offering to consumers supports their efforts and their investments and isn't punitive in nature and say, you customer are doing something with electricity, we're going to stop you from doing that. That's not very helpful.
And I think that goes back to everyone has a voice. Push those utilities to go do that, push the government to up the RPS here in Texas. Everyone has a voice and it needs to be heard, and if it's important to you, then it should be important to the state of Texas.
Indeed.
I'm a teacher, and I'm just thinking from the educator's perspective how I might be able to contribute to the process or increase awareness, but it needs to be in an innovative way, because just standing up in front of the class and lecturing these days is not going to do anything, and I don't know if there's anything available, like in terms of technology that I can share with kids, or are there any initiatives going on that I can be a part of?
Well, I'll tell you that I think the best course of action is for educators to go out to my sector, and I can tell you we go out into the schools quite a bit. We're in the Katy Independent School District and the Houston Independent School District, and we go to schools and we show them solar lighting that we're partnered with, that are inflatable, that you put outside and they charge during the day, and then they can light up an entire room at night. And we bring those types of things along with smart technology and Nest thermostats and things of that nature into the schools, and we let kids touch them and walk around with them and teach them exactly what these things are. What I would say is the best way to get those things done is to go as an independent school district and just ask an energy company to be supportive of that type of thing. We do it. I know Champion Energy does it in the Houston area. I know Green Mountain does it. I know Austin Energy does it. So those programs are out there and available. I think you just have to ask, I think, and people like me are more than excited when asked to get in front of the next consumers. That excites us.
Yeah, do you have? We don't do consumer stuff, but I'll add.
Because of the cold weather all of a sudden. Okay. Do you guys hear me all right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the question I have, I don't really know that much about wind energy, but I've just learned that it's a big thing here in Texas now. It's, cost effective. So I guess my question is, what is the life cycle of these wind turbines? What is the operation cost? Because we know that, cost isn't just, our consumer costs are all blended into how long this is going to last, how much maintenance this takes. Back in the olden days, I read that, birds fly into these and they cause big problems, and we have to stop the windmills, and it costs a lot of money. But I don't really know that as a fact. So maybe you could, shed some data on this. And have the wind turbines, have they become more efficient? Is there a lot of innovation going on in those? Because the first time I saw some was back in the early 2000s in California, and I didn't even really realize that Texas had them. So just kind of along the ideas of what's new in wind energy and how long that lasts and if it's cost effective.
Go.
So most people don't realize that Texas is the largest wind energy state, and we have surpassed California basically, they're second in line, and we're basically double the capacity that they have in California. Wind energy, whenever you look at the renewables, the cheapest is hydro to produce, but nobody in the U.S. is going to let you dam up a river anymore. There's too many ancillary problems with that. The next cheapest is wind energy. I don't know the exact numbers on the operation and maintenance costs. I know they're very low comparable to the size. Most wind energy projects are very large. The average solar project, I would say, is anywhere between 20 and 40 megawatts. The average wind project is going to be probably between 100 and 200 megawatts. As far as the technology itself, the technology has advanced very well over the past few years. Think about how long the traditional windmill has been around, hundreds of years. So the biggest problem that I know that was had with wind energy as far as the maintenance goes is the transmissions within them. The gearbox is going out typically within about 10 years. The technology that's changed is now we have magnetic ball bearings in there, which allow for no fluid and things like that. And the maintenance costs have been cut drastically, and the life cycle is a lot longer. Typically, the life cycle of a wind project is between 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, they do really last a long time, and we're starting to see plants be repowered, where since you've already built the tower, you just get up there and you replace the turbine and the blades, usually with latest and greatest technology, maybe 20 years after the original installation. But because you're only replacing part of it, you've already got the land, you've already got the tower, the cost to do that is cheaper. So I think you'd hope to see these online for a long period of time and then be able to be repowered and go from there.
Absolutely, and all the wind projects you were talking about seeing back in the day in California, that's exactly what they're doing. They're repowering them now for another 20 to 30 years. They're already built there. They just have to switch out the turbines with new ones, and they're ready to go again.
Cool. Any other questions from the crowd? I have one more response on the education. I want to make sure you go to NEED, the National Energy Education Development Organization. It's a nonprofit group that focuses just on energy education in schools. A lot of good materials and good educational resources there. I think it's just need.org. NEED, yeah. And I'll look that up after to make sure I'm right, but I'm pretty sure that's it. So cool. Yeah, come on up.
First of all, I just wanted to make a comment. Does it take a lot of swagger to be in the solar game? Because you guys have it in spades. I mean, what you guys are doing is exceptional. You just said smart grid and smart metering, right? Project out into a time when we have a smart grid or smart metering. What does that look like?
Well, that's a good question. I feel like I planted you. So what it looks like is we always make jokes at work about the fact that the Jetsons is where we want to go. Everybody remembers the Jetsons, and it was everything in their home was automated, and it was automated and self-contained, which meant that, when you were driving home, you could run your own bath, or you could turn your own lights on, or you got up in the morning and you could run your coffee pot. And when everything was done, you could take your home completely to zero. A lot of people don't really realize, or maybe you do, that all this stuff that's plugged into your walls is drawing electricity. Even when you're not using it, there's still a draw that is occurring. So from our perspective, and we Direct Energy owns a company called Hive, and it is entering the market this summer, to start selling products and services to consumers that are all smart related, that really help you automate your home. And it's about convenience for sure, but it's also about having at your easy disposal on a smart device your ability to know when your air conditioning, your HVAC system is starting to suffer because it's all of a sudden running inefficient. It's knowing that your hot water heater is drawing more in the last 4 days than it did the last 10 days. It's knowing that that individual devices that are in your home are not as efficient or as effective as they once were. And then allowing you to immediately get servicing done to those devices to get them back in line with what is efficient. And by the way, everything I just described, we already have. If you're a Direct Energy customer, I can tell you every single day whether your HVAC is performing better or worse than previous day. And I can service you, I can send you a service and an air conditioning, I can dispatch one of our vendor and one of our network services to your home to check on why your device all of a sudden is not acting efficiently. Refrigerator repair, all those things. The problem with, and I'll tell you exactly why this is important to me. A couple of years ago, I had an air conditioning system that was running 24 hours a day, and I didn't know about it. My thermostat told me it was cycling on and off, but it wasn't. And I got my bill that month, and I fell on the ground with a bill that was, $1,000. And the whole reason that I ended up in that situation was because I didn't know. In the where we are going is complete understanding about data and about how your home is performing and about what is broken and when it broke and how do I fix it. And those are the things that you will do, and it's all about understanding. And the moment that you have that, you'll make the right decisions, and your bills will be cheaper, your homes will be more efficient. I mean, that's where we're going. Whole home.
Super great. You have some thoughts on that? Yeah, totally agree. I think that's a huge piece. When I think about the future, that's kind of what I see is making sure that you as a consumer get full value out of every bit that you consume. If you like long hot showers, take long hot showers. Don't air condition your home when you're not there. Make sure that you're empowered to know everything that's going on with your consumption and that it's exactly how you want it. And that for the source of the energy that you're consuming, that you're empowered to choose whatever source that you want and make that as clean and green as you want, solar, wind, or other. That, I think, is the opportunity of the technology improvement and what these two companies are really helping deliver, which I'm excited to support. So that's about our time. We'll hang out for a second for other questions if you would like. Thank you all for coming out. Walk around, go learn some things and do some things, and good luck to y'all.